We've got room in the garage for the first time in ages, so we need to get some work done on the Chevelle. Today we're going to take a look at ride height so we can get this thing down to the shop and have them adjust the alignment. Very important anytime after you do any suspension adjustments to do the alignment. As important as doing the alignment is, having your ride height done first is even more important. The last thing that you want to do is have to go back and redo all of the alignment because you made adjustments after the fact, so stick around. So ride height can be a very subjective kind of thing. We're obviously going for a low sleek look on this. We're doing more of a resto mod build, thus running 18-inch or bigger wheels. Things like that. Now you're going to have limitations that you have to work around. For instance, the front, if we go too low, we get into the fender wells. If you don't have fender wells, you're going to get to the point where the fender interferes with turning the tire, things like that. So what I like to do is get everything set up high enough where I've got good clearances, take it for a drive to get the suspension to settle some, and then do my initial ride height. It only takes a couple miles. Then you're going to need your good old measuring tape. One of the other things I like to do is pick a reference point to determine my ride height. In this case, I'm going to use the door lower part of the rocker panel here. I want that to be fairly level. That'll give the car a good level look, and if need be, I might bump the back end up a smidge to give it a slight front rake. Last thing we want to do is get stuck with the cowboy rake with the front end of this thing sticking up in the air. But we also need to pay attention to our left and right. Some GM cars and trucks have a tendency to get a little bit wonky with weight distribution, things like that. And keep in mind that whenever you're sitting in the car, somebody else is sitting in the car, it can shift. It's not going to do a whole lot of that with these QA1 coilovers, so I'm going to set this fairly neutral. I've got decent clearance up front. In fact, I've got plenty of clearance for turning. It might, on a heavy bump, get into the fender well. And honestly, a tire that was set in maybe another ½ inch would have a lot more clearance. It's right on where that curve goes up into the fender well. But it's a pretty good look on the front already. So I'm going to verify both fronts to make sure. And we're looking at, if we draw a center line through the middle of the wheel, just a smidge under 25 inches. Now remember, whenever it comes to adjusting these, that especially on the fronts, because of the geometry of this front suspension, that if you were to need to adjust this, say, an inch, it's not going to take an inch on the coilover because you're adjusting a point in the middle of a arc swing. So make small adjustments, you're going to get big changes on the outside. Wow, that is actually spot on, which is impressive because I was just using the old count the collars trick. Go ahead and check the rear. 24.5 or so on the rear, which means the rear might be sitting a little bit lower. And then the driver's side is ½ inch lower than the passenger side. Not the end of the world. As I said, I want to check, maybe just be easier to throw the door open. I want to check the rocker panel line. That's kind of what I'm looking for. 11 up front, 11.5 in the back. So we've got a little bit of Rake. Even though the rear tires looked a lot more tucked, we do have some rake. The back end is riding just a smidge higher. So while the front is good, I do need to bring this corner up about 1/2 inch. Now the rear's a little bit different because we're running the factory style triangulated 4-link, and the shocks mount on the back side of the axle. And so whenever we make adjustments there, they're going to be more 1-to-1. So if I need to bring this side up about 1/2 inch, I'm going to extend that collar about 1/2 inch on the driver's side. Keep in mind though, making that adjustment can throw everything else out of whack. So 1/2 inch on this side might actually push the other side down 1/4 inch or so. So I may start at 1/4 inch on this side, put it back down on weight, and see what it does there. Also keep in mind, this doesn't have sway bars on it yet. Sway bars can really change how this thing sits out, so we want to make sure and get all of that done before we take it in for an alignment. Okay, so I've got a sway bar mocked up in place. I went ahead and ran the left side up a couple turns, not much. It's not going to take much to get this thing to square out, especially with the sway bar installed. Now the sway bar is loosely installed on there. It's time for shims. And if I push it all the way to one side, it looks to me like the thicker ones may be the way to go. So we're going to try and get the thicker ones in here on both sides. Okay. Yep, okay, so the front's getting a little snug. Okay, there we go. So I got the thick ones in there. We're snug on both sides. So I want to check our measurement from the front bracket. Just kind of use something, give me a gauge. Just a smidge past there. This one needs to go in. Okay, so the bar's wanting to slide back. I'm going to have to tighten this one up and pay attention to where it lands to keep it square, because it wants to be about right there, and then it slides back. So okay, we're good and square. I'm going to tighten everything down and torque it down. Remember, the thing about sway bars is it's fine running with the front only, but you don't want to run with the rear only. Cause the back end to get a little bit unpredictable and squirrely. So if you're going to do a rear sway bar, make sure you do a front. And it's always a good idea that if you're doing an upgraded rear sway bar, that you should probably upgrade the front also to the same brand so they work in tandem. Okay, now that we got the rear sway bar on, let's go ahead and double check all of our measurements. Looks like we may have lifted the front just a smidge. Okay. So we're 24.5 on this side. 24.5 on this side. So the back is spot on. The front, driver's side is 25 3/4. 25.5 on the passenger, which isn't bad. By the time somebody sits in the driver's seat, that'll probably kind of even out some. So I'm not going to make any adjustments right now. 12 in the rear, about 11.5. So we got about a 1/2 inch rake in it. So we're looking good there. So the hardware size was not right. I had to substitute my own hardware. Not that I'm complaining. Ended up using bigger hardware than was included in the kit. And you don't have to drill out or anything. It still fits. As you can see, the sway bar is still loose up in here. This bushing grease is legit like glue. It is nasty. So be aware, have a towel around, because if you get it on your fingers, it is on your fingers. So let's try this. And the sway bar mounts actually have grease zerks, and they're positioned in a way that they're going to push grease into the bushing. So I would worry less about them and more about these end links. And honestly, you're going to see where these end links goes. If you have any issues figuring that out, just ring the bell and I'll have Tommy come hit you over the head with a tack hammer. Just dabbing a little grease on my bushing, baby. Just dabbing a little grease on my bushing, yeah. And we put the cap on, next comes the sleeve. Then the bottom bushing retainer thingy comes and after that. Not gonna lie, this is kind of a pain in the butt one-man project. The rear was a lot easier by yourself. But it's doable. It is doable. You just gotta get creative. Boop. And you'll see now why you want to compress the suspension. Sorry, I'm looking at a bushing and putting grease on it. Come on. Hopefully, with this, there's not going to be enough threads. Okay, so we need to push this tire up so we can get enough threads. Let's just hope that this doesn't fall out, because it'll pick up so much dirt. Oh, ouch! Son of a gun, that was my knee. I just smoked it with the jack. Oh, that hurt. Oh, that hurt. Obviously, don't be stupid. Make sure you have a jack stand. This is sketchy enough as is. Okay. In fact, make sure you have multiple jack stands. I don't want to be responsible for anybody's death. Okay, that looks better. We're gonna be able to, maybe. Is it gonna grab threads? Yes, it is. Okay. Let's tighten her down a little bit. Just going a couple threads out for now until we can get the other side down. We still have to tighten these up, so we want to make sure that we kind of get everybody snagged together before we put her back down on the ground. I've got jacks on jacks on jacks. Where is my measuring tape at? Okay. There it is. So be aware, after doing this, the dynamics and handling of your car have probably changed. So just take it easy. Let's double check our ride heights here. 25.5 there. 26, so we're 1/2 inch high now on the front driver. That's fine. 24 3/4. And 24 3/4. So rear's good. Check the rake. 1 foot up front. Uh-oh. 1 foot in the back. So we're pretty level now. Pretty level. Not always a bad thing, and it might settle, but I think we can go ahead, and most likely the front will settle a little bit, but the back, yeah, the back might settle some too. So I think we should be good to go ahead and get an alignment done on it. Make sure that it's not completely destroying the tires. Then any adjustments that we're going to be making are going to be so minute, they shouldn't really affect the alignment any. So that's pretty much it. This covers the broad spectrum. This covers the broad spectrum of the QA1 handling kit for the Chevelles. We did a video on the fronts, we did a video on the rears, we've done a video on setting the ride heights and the sway bars. There are suggested settings for compression and rebound on these things based on what kind of driving you're going to do. I've got them set in the middle right now. Not too worried about that, but as things kind of break in and start finding out where they want to be, we'll make adjustments to that as need be. And yeah, she's ready to go down the road. Listen, I want to thank you guys as always for stopping by the garage. Remember, ABT, always be tuning.